So again, and you all know this already, but this is how I do things, good, bad, or indifferent. But on your desktop or whatever, make a new folder out there, and I'm going to just call it contact page. Just going to make it one word, contact page. I'd like you to follow along because this will give you a form and it'll give you the CSS that's in it too. All right, so contact page, open it up, come in there and do your new text document. And we're going to change that to index. Make sure you remove the dot text in there, .html. Put in a folder that's called CSS. And in the folder, put in your styles.css file. Not a folder. Put in a file that's called styles.css. I don't know why you put a folder in there, but so, in other words, when you're done, when you look up on the screen here, you should have a folder called Contact Page. And if you double click on the folder called Contact Page, you should have a folder in there called CSS and a file called index.html. And if you open up the CSS folder, you should have a file in there called styles.css. Any questions on that? Any, by now, hopefully that's whatever. What's going to happen when we get into the JavaScript stuff in about 2 weeks is we're going to add a JS folder onto this too. And if we only have one file, I typically just call mine script or scripts.js, but you can call it whatever you want. All right. Okay. So once we've got that contact page, just right mouse click on it and let's open it with code. All right, and we want to first, this is going to look extremely ugly because we're going to do all the CSS last. Okay, don't let that throw you. That's totally fine. All right, in fact, let's see once, because I've got it. So here's what our end product will look like. But again, we're not making this up above because we don't have those pages. So I'm not making that. But I just want to show you that if I bring this up, and I go and comment out that line that brings in our CSS, all right, and we go back and we take that page, and again, so ours is going to look like that, which is a big difference, all right, and that's totally fine. Again, we won't have this stuff here. We won't have that. Don't worry about that. That's totally fine. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, as we typically do in here, is I'm going to come in and add my exclamation point tab. All right. And I'll just change the title to contact form. Again, that's no big thing. We could call it whatever we wanted to call it. Okay. So again, I'm not worrying in here about any of the meta tags. I'm not worrying in here about setting up a header section, etc. None of that stuff. That's the first 38 lines or almost this whole first page. All right, so you've got that stuff now, what we need. So I'm going to come right into the body here. In fact, to make this bigger, I'm going to close that there so we got more room. And I'm going to put a main section in here. And I'm going to give it a class that's equal to contact. All right, and we're going to start throwing everything in there. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an H1, and that's going to have a class as well, and I called it contact header. And all this says literally is contact form. Then underneath that, I put in a paragraph, and I gave that a class too, sorry. So class equal, and for whatever reason, I called it contact para. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm sure, we all live our lives in certain ways where people say, why'd you do that? You say, I don't know, because I do. All right. And Because I got asked once, well, why do you put your H1s all on the same line, but you put your paragraphs on multiple lines? Because I do. I don't know. It's just the way that I do things. If you don't like the way that I'm doing it, establish your own style. You're not hurting my feelings any. So in here, this is just going to say all fields required. All right. So not real much in there right now. I mean, I can go back and open it with live server, and that's what I've got. Not much. All right. But we're going to just keep adding and adding and adding to it. All right. So then I put in here, and I like to put a space there, but you don't have to. Oops. A div. And I gave that div an ID of contact form div. All right. And now the magic, so to speak, is going to start, because there's really nothing in here that we've done thus far that's new. There really isn't. But now we are going to start doing new stuff. Now, what I'm about to show you is a form tag. In my form tag, I put over 1, 2, 3, about 5 different lines. You don't have to do that. I just did it for readability. You with me? So I've got here, and a form starts with a form tag. And I said ID, I'm sorry, I gave it a class. Class equals form. All right, then on the next line, I put in method. We're going to go over all this in just a minute. Equals get. Then action equals nothing. See, we're already to the back of the first page. ID equal contact form. And finally, name equal contact form. All right, and inside of here is where we are going to put all of our form stuff. All right, now I'm not going to show this again because nothing has changed, but I want to go over everything that's in this form tag. You all with me? So if you haven't saved, not a bad time to do your Control S or however you do a save. All right, even if you're still typing, this won't go anywhere for a couple minutes, but please look up on the screen. It's important that you understand each of the attributes that are in here. So starting with the method is going to be either get or post. All right? And even though this is get usually means you're grabbing something. We could have made this post if we wanted, if we were sending it someplace. We're not. How do I know that? Because this says where we're sending it. So we're not sending it anywhere. So get is just fine here. What are the differences between get and post? Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but if you look up on the screen here, if you've ever gone out to a site, like let's just say I go out to Amazon.com. All right. So I go out there and let's say that I want to go and I want to search in books. My 4-year-old granddaughter is now becoming obsessed with Harry Potter. So I come in here. All right. Do you notice when you look up on my address bar at the top and you look, there's a question mark and all that stuff that follows. That's called a query string. That automatically gets created when you do a get. Now, on the other hand, if I went and grabbed the book from here and actually put it into my shopping cart and I went over to my shopping cart page, it's not going to show stuff up there because it's going to ask me things like my credit card number, etc. All right? Or it could conceivably ask me for that kind of stuff. So get is for basically two things. When you're getting information, or if you're sending something out, it's got nothing in there that's private. So no passwords, no credit card numbers, etc. All right? Post, on the other hand, hides that same information in what are called headers, which you don't see. All right? So if you've got information like passwords, credit card numbers, etc., the method would be post. Now, I didn't do this, but just so you know, probably 9 times out of 10, rather than seeing it like this, like get, you'll almost always see it in caps. It doesn't matter if you put it in caps or lowercase. All right? But usually you'll see it like that. So this is the method, post or get. A couple of other things. When you do a get, you can bookmark something that's done with a get. You can't bookmark a post. Get can only be, I think it's 4K, so 4,000 characters in length, which might sound like a lot until you start doing really, 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 really refined searches. All right? Post, if it has a limit, I don't know what it is. It's probably 65,536, if there is a limit. All right? So post is typically, if you've ever filled out a form on the internet, you've done a post. All right? We don't want this to go anywhere, so our action is there. Now, let's suppose we wanted this to go someplace. We wanted it to go out to a site, maybe to Amazon. All right? Something like that. Then we could put in there that particular file. It wouldn't be an HTML file. It would be a .asp or a .php or something else, a server-side file. All right? But I don't want it to go anywhere. Sometimes you'll see it like that. Sometimes you'll see an asterisk in there. All right? There's really no need to do that. Technically, I could have left the action off because there isn't any. But I just wanted to show you that. Now, the other thing, too, is just so you know, this is going to become more and more important. We've talked about it a little bit. If you remember, we had that chapter, we talked a little bit about the DOM. All right? And we'll talk more about it when we get to JavaScript. But if you do a get element by ID, that's the ID you'd use, would be contact form. Does that make sense? All right. The name that's in here, technically, you never need to use the name property until you get to the class in the third semester. Because this is what it's called on the client, and this is the way it's referred to on the server, for lack of better words. I'm being general here, but basically that's the way it is. So the students I have now who are in their third semester, who are in my class in the afternoon, will still keep putting in ID and name, but they're using the name and they're not going to really be using the ID very much anymore. You guys are using the ID, but you're not using the name. All right? Okay. So let's start filling in these forms. Now, let me put in the first thing that's in here. Let me put in the whole first thing. It's about 9 or 10 lines, and then we'll go over the line at a time. All right? So I'm going to come down here and literally just start typing. So let me move that up. Oops. Oh, what happened there? And for now, we're just going to put a couple BR tags at the end. So if you just stop for a second, please, and look up on the screen here. So that's what we've done. Does that make sense? And immediately underneath that, we're going to have last name, address, city. All right, so those three will be exactly like this. So in other words, if you want to, if you're a little bit ahead, you can grab all of this stuff till right there and copy it 2 more times. All right, but I'm just, not everybody types at the same speed, so I'm going to give you a minute, and I want to go over everything that's in blue until hopefully at least you all understand it. Can I go down to the stuff in blue? Does everybody have everything up till here? If you don't, say something. So again, if you do have all that's in there right now, if you've got everything done, just grab the stuff in blue like I've got, and right where my cursor is, copy it in there 2 more times. Don't worry about changing anything yet. We'll change it in a bit. And once we get into the chapter, I'm not going to do that much lecturing from the chapter because I'd rather show you this. This is an important enough concept because virtually every website that you create will want some kind of a contact form on it. Some will be remarkably simple. Some will be remarkably complex. We're doing one that's pretty much in the middle. We're not doing every single thing there is, but we're going to add a lot of the stuff that there is. All right? So even if you're still typing, if you look up on the screen here, I want to go over what's in blue. All right? The first thing, as you'd guess, is a label tag, and that's going to put that label. So if you look on the screen here, that's what made this. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you have to put in a label? Technically, no. You don't have to. In fact, what's in vogue with some people today, I'm going to remove this, but what they do is in their input tag like this, so don't worry about putting this in. They put in placeholder equal something like first name here. And if you do that, technically you really don't need a label there. You see that? And as soon as I take my mouse and I put it here and I begin typing, that goes away. But if there's nothing there, it comes back. So some forms that you see today no longer have labels. Some forms that you see today still do have labels. All right? It can be a personal thing. It can be a spatial type of thing. Do we have space for that, etc. So what do we have here? Our label. I just set a class for all my labels to contact label so that I'm able to format all of them together. Does that make sense? All right. This right here, just so you know, you don't need to do this. What that thing that's in blue right there, what that does is it says, if I click on the label, immediately move my cursor over into the text box that goes with that label. Did you hear what I said? So again, when you look on the screen here, notice if I click on the label, my cursor goes right there. So if my cursor was here and I click on the label, see how it went inside of the box? All right. And that's just considered to be a nicety. It's not that you have to do that. So this is the name of the label, first name, ending my label tag. Then we've got this input tag that's in blue now. There are several different types that you can put in here. For instance, if we wanted it to be an email, we change the type to email. The generic type is the type I've used here, text. There's a lot of things that I'm not putting in here that you can put in. For instance, I could have set a length for this. I could have set a max length for this, which is the maximum number of characters you can type. So there are things you can set, but that I have not set in here. So the type is text because it's going to be literally just a text box. I'm going to refer to it as first name. Now look on the screen because this is important. This name right here that you see under the 4 must be exactly the same name as what you put in for the ID. If you want that to work, then if you click on the label, it jumps into the text box. If you give it different names, it doesn't know the association. And for all of my inputs, they all have a class of text box. Finally, at the end, I put a span there, and I'm going to make that red and bold later. All of these are required fields, but I'm still putting an asterisk after each one to let you know, hey, they are required. All right. So I'm going to grab this that I just created here, this label thing, all the way down. So on mine, it's lines 23 through 30. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And then right underneath it, I'm going to put it in again twice. So I've already got my 1 in there for the first name, and I've explained that one to you. So now immediately underneath that, I'm going to change this one to last name, and this to last name. All right. And then this to last name, and this to last name. All right. And then next is address. So again, it's going to look very similar, except in here, this will now be address. And so will this. So I'm just going to copy it here, paste it here, paste it here. And I told you to copy it in twice. I was wrong. Copy it in 3 times because we're going to put city in next. So I wouldn't have done that, but I did. So this will be city. So city. So after I've done all that, if you look up on the screen here, this is what I now have. That's what you should have. So we made the first one, I went over it, and I copied it 3 more times. Don't worry about it lining up, it all will line up. So again, let me close a couple of these. So like I said, create the first one, and then make 3 copies of it. So the first one in there has got first name, so that was the first one that we did. So grab those 8 lines and copy it 3 times. Then in the second one, change first name to last name every occurrence. Make sure that this is lowercase, and then in here, that's your actual label itself, make that uppercase. Then do the next one, which is address, and the next one, which is city. All right? I'll give you a couple minutes to hopefully, if you've fallen behind, to catch back up. If you are caught up, then go out and open up that file I just sent you called state.txt if it is not currently open. After we do that, in just a moment, we will then be up to about a line 150 of my handout here. Not my handout, but what I did for it. And my whole thing is 272 lines. So we'll already have 150 out of 272 lines done. All right, between 55 and 60% is already finished then. And again, I'm not trying to confuse you with this stuff. It's just the opposite. I'm thinking that if you see it in action, so to speak, that it's much easier for you to do. All right. So again, first name, then last name, and it's just these 8 lines. So first name, then last name, those 8 lines, then address, and then city. So these are all the same, except you've changed the actual thing here and here. All right? And like I said, you've already seen this. We want it to eventually look like this. So we've already got first name, last name, address, and city done. In just a minute, I am going to give you, we're going to put in the state thing. When we get done with that, the zip code and the cell phone are just like these, so you can copy one of those down. See what I'm saying? And then we'll be all the way down to here. So we really don't have much left after that. All right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, exactly what I'd want you to do, and that is I'm going to go out to the email I just sent you. All right, and I thought I just sent it to you. Didn't I send it?
Yep.
Okay, then it's in my sends because I didn't include myself on there. Yep, there it is. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to download it, which sends it to my downloads folder. I'm going to open it up in my downloads folder, and I'm going to do a Control A, Control C to just copy all of it. And then I'm going to add it to the file we're working on. So in other words, we're down to here, and it's got to be before that form tag. Someone hit enter and paste it in. All right, I might have to, yep, looks like I'm going to have to do a little bit of tabbing, but that's okay. And I didn't type this in myself. This is online. All right, I don't think you'd probably ever want to type that in yourself. But when you get done with that now, and I look at this again, it should now look like this. Now notice there is no label there that says state. We could have put one in, which would have been fine. And all of our states are in here, plus the District of Columbia. All right. You could, there are free things out there for this. There's free things out there for, I guess I did have a label here that said state. So let's put that in. Guess what? You know how to do that already. You can just copy the label from here, any one of these labels, and then just put it in here before the select. So this will say state. So will this. Okay. And if I save, now it looks, oops, it looks like this. All right, and if you want, some people put colons at the end of each one of their label names. So first name colon. You want to do that, do that. You don't want to do that, don't do it. You're not turning this in. All right. This is a code along exercise for all of us. All right. So my hope is that by now you've all had a chance to put in the first name, the last name, the address, and the city. All right. Now we just grabbed the state right here. And again, I gave you all that stuff. So what's left? Well, you know what's left. All right. The next things that we want in there, again, if I look at the end product, so we've got first name, we've got last name, we've got address, we've got city, we've got state. So we want to do zip code and cell phone. I'm going to ask, though, that you keep this file when we get done. Did you all hear me? Because when we get into the JavaScript, I'm going to show you with zip code how we can make sure they put it in either this format with 5 digits or this format, 5 digits hyphen 4 digits. And when we get to phone, we're going to make sure they put it in this way. All right? So I'm going to go back to where I've got this label here. It doesn't matter which one you grab. I just grab the city one that's in here. And right below all my state information, I'm going to paste it in twice. Paste, hit enter, and paste again. All right. And the first one will be zip. That's all I called it. You can call it zip, zip code. It doesn't matter. All right. And underneath that one, I'm going to put in phone. Call it cell phone. Again, doesn't really matter. Oh, that one's moved up. And after that, I'll take your question in a second. It should now look like, whoop, and I forgot my line break. All right, which I'll put in right now. But I've got the zip in the phone. And your question?
I was just going to ask if I could look at what the top of the code is for each of those
Yes.
labels. So it's label class is the top code, and then this
span. Label class equals, just like that. They're all like.
Span class is the bottom.
The span is at the bottom. The span is actually not part of the label. It's not part of the input. It's just that asterisk that we're putting off to the right.
Yeah, I just grabbed a wrong chunk of that.
All right, I added the line breaks. There. Okay, again, it's not formatted at all, but the point is, when we look at the final end product here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different fields, and then 2 buttons. You all see that? 10 fields and 2 buttons. We have now done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those 10. Okay, questions? All right. Okay. So now there's about 100 lines left. Okay? And most of that, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to type in. Now, a couple things before we do this. Okay? Well, again, if you look on here, I want to look at the final product here. One thing I should have asked for was an email, and I didn't. I liked the way this was spaced out. That's why I didn't want to add another field. But I probably could have removed one of those fields and replaced it with an email. All right. The only reason that I'm telling you this is let's pretend for just a moment, let's pretend that this field right here was email. It's not, but we're pretending it is. Then for the type, we would say email in there. All right. There are some built-in types that came in with HTML5 that were not previously available. All right. So I'm down to here, and I just finished doing the phone. So underneath the phone, I'm going to continue on. Now we want gender. And again, please look up on the screen here. This is what we want. You probably have heard of this term already from me or somebody else. These are referred to here and here. These are radio buttons. Radio buttons are designed to give you what are referred to as mutually exclusive choices. In other words, one of these, if you choose one of them, the other one can't be selected. We're also going to default. So I've just grabbed the first one. You don't have to, but I'm defaulting them. If I knew this was a girls' school, that would make a lot of sense. If it was a boys' school, that would make a lot of sense. And actually, considering the fact that from the numbers I've read, it's like 3% of the people who go here are female, that probably would have made more sense to use that one. All right, and probably most of the people, are in this age group that are at this institution, are somewhere in there. Now that's a big wide age group, because when we did this, I did it for people joining a gym. All right. So we're going to first create this set of radio buttons, then this set of radio buttons, then this set of checkboxes. Checkboxes are set up so you can check 0, 1, or 2 in this case. Whereas notice in radio buttons, as soon as I click male, female becomes unclicked. Now you don't even have to set a default value, but if you do set a default value like we're going to do, then you know one of them is always going to be checked on, whatever, selected, whatever you want to say. All right, I think that's a better idea to do that. Not everybody agrees with that. So we're going to do the gender one, then we're going to do the age one. So I'm going to put them both in, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about both of them. All right. So I'm down here right underneath where we just did the phone. Okay. Now I put a class in here of SH. If you say, what does SH stand for? No, not a dirty word. I don't remember, but it's not that word. And I put about 4 blank spaces here too, just so you know. I forgot to put a label up at the top of this. It says gender, so I'm going to put that in there right now. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to copy that in. All right, let me check it, make sure that I did it correctly. Not that one. So there's the gender. See that? And again, it already works. All right. The next thing that we want to put in there is age, and there's going to be 4 of these. Everybody see that? Now, you can do this any way you want to, but since I'm almost doing the same thing, I'm going to grab this right there, and I'm going to copy it in. I'm going to have to do a little bit of reformatting because I hate the formatting that's built into this editor. But I've already got a lot of that done, is what I'm saying. So that was gender, female, male, right there. All right. And then I'm putting it in again. And this is going to be age. All right. And I've got 2 of those already. I'm going to have to change them, but I'm going to copy them and put them in again. All right. And now I will put my age stuff in here. I don't remember what the third age group was, 51 to 75. And the last one is 76 to 100. Now, I'm going to just take a quick look and make sure I've created it correctly. There's that. Well, I didn't put a line break in there, but it looks like everything else looks like it's okay, except I've got checked in the wrong spot, but that's fine. So before my first one here, so gender male, and after that I want 2 line breaks. And I want this one checked, but I don't want that one checked. So that's what it should look like when you're done. All right, I'll put it back up there in just a second, but I want to make sure everybody gets that. So again, when we go back and we look at our finished product, whoops, that's nice. Anyway, we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of our things put in here. So the next thing is the check. We got the boxes and the 2 buttons. All right, so let me go back. All right. And really, I'm not saying that this is a fantastic form, but when you're doing this and you start to get it to work, what a lot of people will do is they'll make a copy of something like this, and they'll use that as a starter template. What you'll see in just a couple minutes as we start going through this stuff in more detail after the break, and that is, for example, there are fields like there's a number field that will allow just numbers. There is a color field that will bring up the color palette for us. There is a date field. So if we wanted something like date joined or something like that, we could put that in there. All right. Now I want to do the check boxes and the buttons, and then we'll take a break because basically we're done after that.
Go up just a little bit on the code here. I think I'm missing something with the male and female.
That's right here.
With the drop down.
That's in that states.txt file that I gave you. And I should have gone over that. We'll look at that in just a minute. When you use a drop down, and I'll go right back to where we just were, Michael, but notice it's set up the same and that it's got an ID and a name and a class, but it's select. And then each option is put in here. You don't have to put in an option like this, but if you don't, now I can check in code and say if the option is equal to select your state, I know they haven't selected a state. If I leave that first one that's highlighted there, if I leave it off, then it's going to default to Alabama because that's the first state. That's why typically you put in something like that. So notice it's got value, and then it's got this. What's the difference? If I'm storing it into a database, I'm storing the value. What comes after this is just what shows on the screen. Now, a lot of people know, if I bet you if I ask 10 people, what's the state abbreviation for Missouri? I bet you 10 people could tell me it's Mo. All right. But with some states, I don't think they would probably know. Not everybody would know. So this is how you would store it typically, like it may be in a database or something like that. This is what you're showing on the screen. All right, so the select is made up of a series of options. Again, this is also referred to as a drop-down list.
Is there a way to code in a link to that instead of typing that or copying and pasting all that in?
There very well could be. I don't know. All right. So the only things that we've got left are the input for the reason that we called it and the two buttons. All right. So I'm going to come in here, and where I've got this label for the age, I'm going to copy that. See what I'm doing? And I'm going to copy two of the radio buttons, just two of them. All right. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And again, I'm going to paste that in. Now I got to make major changes to this because it is not, they're not going to be radio buttons. They're going to be checkboxes. And I just call this reason. This is a health thing, and it was the reason for joining. So I just call this reason right here. Instead of this being a radio button, the type of this is checkbox. All right. Now, I should have shown you this. I didn't. But if you look up on the screen here, everybody, do you notice in here, this has got a name and it doesn't have an ID? We could put one in there. Okay? If we needed to do so, for whatever reason, we could. All right. So let's see. For the checkbox, I am going to put it in ID for each one of these. So this is the checkbox. All right. And I'm going to leave that SH. I'm not sure if that's going to work or not, but that still is fine. So these checkboxes, I'm going to call these reason 1 and reason 2. And I'm going to give them an ID with the same thing. So ID equals reason 1. Oops. This is, again, my checkbox. And this is going to say get healthy. And it's going to be checked, and there'll be nothing after this. This one is going to look almost the same. Reason 2. And the value of this one, not get healthy, I think I said get in shape or something like that. Lose weight. Let me move this down. Oops. And let's see if it worked. All right, so reason, so this is screwed up, so I'll have to fix that. I'll fix that right now. So right before this, we wanted a couple more line breaks. All right, so this reason is screwed up. I'll have to fix that right now. So what's wrong? Let me look at my own notes. Oh, I still have to say it. That's why. So this has got to be get healthy. And this has to be lose weight. And again, I'll want a couple blank spaces here. And let's take a look and see what it looks like now. Okay. So the only thing that's left now are the buttons. Okay. So I'm going to put those in, then we're taking a break. Still inside of my form here. Oh, that's also a required field, isn't it? I probably left those off the other ones. I don't even care. It's okay. I'm more concerned with you understanding the makeup of a form. All right. So I'm going to come in here, and just because I want to be able to center these, etc., these are going to be my buttons, but I put them into a class. Yeah, and I did cheat a little bit. I use flex, parent, and I'm going to have another one called contact button. That's for the div. Let me move that up. And again, I'm going to just make a copy of it. So let me grab all of this. And this one is reset. All right, and again, we'll need a couple of blank lines here. So let's take a look and see if it's done. All right, so that's what the form should look like. So that's the form totally non-styled. All right. What I will do during the break, because we're going to take one in just a minute, is I will print off 5 copies of this. So if you fell behind or whatever, you can take a look at it. I'm more concerned with when we get back from the break with us styling this, and there's not that much styling that we're going to put in here, but enough so that it'll look decent. All right. So I've got 10:05. Let's take a break, please, and we'll come back. Let's make it till 10:20.